Stay on.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the College Football Cut. I'm your host, Adam Mack, joined alongside my great co-host, Mr. Jerred Harrell. Jerred, how are you doing tonight, man?
As always, I'm better now, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
We're still doing this. Another great week.
Yeah, obviously this is a little bit different this week. We have a big holiday on Thursday, so we're recording this on a Monday, but we'll be posting this live on Thursday. So since this will be coming out live on Thursday, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm very thankful to all college football for giving us something to talk about constantly. But we have a fun one. But usually we'll spend Thursdays, we'll talk about the college football playoff ranking. Obviously, with us recording this on a Monday, the playoff rankings don't come out until tomorrow. So, but truthfully, I don't see much big change. The only thing I expect to happen, I think there's a change at number 2. I think we'll go Georgia at 1, Ohio State at 2, Alabama at 3, and I think Cincinnati squeaks in at 4. After Ohio State's dominating win, I think they did enough to jump Alabama. Well, what are your thoughts before the rankings come out tomorrow?
Yeah, I think you got it. And then the top 4 there, I think that's probably what it's going to be. And then 5 and 6, I think we could probably expect Michigan and then Notre Dame to fall into those slots. It's pretty obvious. It's just you bump out the couple that lost and move everybody up, and that's just the way the world works.
I don't think you see much craziness happening. I think the only thing I think would cause a lot of uproar is if Michigan finds their way into the top 4, setting up for a top 4 matchup, obviously this weekend, and we will. We'll get to big week this week. Obviously, it's rivalry week. It's always the fun week of the year, but a little different thing we want to try differently. Every week we mention it a little bit, but the coaching carousel.
Yeah.
It is one of just an exciting thing. I always enjoyed it. Kind of seeing who's going to go where, what jobs are opening, kind of some shocking coaching jobs have opened up. So we're going to go through some of the big ones. Actually, pretty much all of them that are currently open at the moment. Obviously, with the season not even being over yet, we still have a few more jobs. But let's get into some of the few ones. So far, 4 jobs have already found their replacements. Jim Mora, returning to coaching, is going to take back over at UConn. Clay Helton, the former USC coach, is now at Georgia Southern.
Right. Texas
Tech hired longtime Texas high school coach and former Baylor associate head coach Joey McGuire. This is a shocking one when I saw it because I didn't really hear about it, but longtime defensive coordinator Don Brown is being brought in to, I would say, save UMass football, but UMass football has never been relevant. They haven't played in a bowl game since the 60s. So I thought that was kind of an interesting hire, but
sure.
I was just a quick question. Out of the 4 of those, who do you think lasts the longest and which one do you think gets fired first?
Oh my gosh. So we got UMass, UConn, Georgia Southern, and then what was the 4th one?
UConn, Georgia Southern, Texas Tech, UMass.
Texas Tech. Just based on the programs themselves, I would say the one most likely to get cut first would be Texas Tech, just because of the competitive nature of Texas Tech compared to the other schools. But especially with UConn and UMass, they're not super traditional winning programs, so there's not so much at stake. I think we lost your audio, Adam.
I'm going to get new headphones.
There he is.
Sorry that my audio is not going to be great today. Christian, don't fire me. But looking at these guys, I'm actually going to go a different route. I think Texas Tech and Joey McGuire is actually gonna probably last the longest.
Okay.
He's he's a long-time football coach. He's had a lot of success in Texas. Obviously, it's at the high school level, but high school level in Texas is a different breed. Basically,
Right.
Junior college. So I really like that hire for them. And I think the first fire is going to be Don Brown at UMass. UMass has never been good at football. They're traditionally always the worst team in college football. And I haven't been a huge fan of Don Brown on top of that the last few years. I think he'll be able to get some, better recruits for, UMass's standards just because of who he is. But in the end, he wasn't impressive with me at Michigan. He really, brought that defense down. He went to Arizona, and Arizona has just been a garbage football team all year. So I'm going to say Don Brown's probably going to be the first to go. Wouldn't surprise me if Jim Mora, same thing. He's been out of the game a long time. I think it was one of those hires where you're trying to bring in a big name guy to bring in big name recruits. I don't think necessarily he's the right guy to do it, but we'll see what happens. But those are pretty four boring jobs. So let's get into some of the exciting ones. Let's go down some of the ones. We'll start with the G5 schools.
Okay.
Florida International out of Conference USA. Butch Jones, had some nice choice words for his former employer as he left. But my guy, you're not going to be happy with this as a Notre Dame fan, but I'm going to go with Marcus Freeman, defensive coordinator from Notre Dame. Obviously, his first year at Notre Dame. Spent the previous 4 years at Cincinnati as the defensive coordinator. He's a phenomenal recruiter. Brought a lot of Cincinnati's core in on that defensive side of the ball. And, Cincinnati was a top 10 team defensively. He's super young. You can bring good players in. I think that's a guy that, Florida International would, love to get into that program.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of these programs, especially the G5 programs that we're going to talk about, I think a lot of them are going to end up bringing in coordinators, similar to like what Marshall did with Coach Huff. And that's good to, revitalize a program that has been struggling lately. They can bring in an assistant coach or a coordinator from a successful program that's been under a good head coach, and they can really jumpstart the program again. So, it'd be tough for the Irish to lose him, but that'd be great for Florida International.
Absolutely. Let's stick with I think the only other G5 school I have on my list, unless I'm wrong, but the Akron Zips, a team that's historically not been a strong football team. I think my pick is going to be a little bit also surprising, but who do you have for taking over at Akron?
Honestly, I was going to listen to hear what you had to say.
All right, let's go with that.
Well, because it's to me, it's similar to like Florida International, where I think an assistant coach or coordinator might end up at that job, and that just opens it wide open. Because obviously there's way more of those than there is head coaches, but it'll be interesting to see. Who were you thinking?
Yeah, so I actually don't have a coordinator. I also don't have a college coach.
Oh, okay.
I have Charlie Fry, the Dolphins quarterback coach. The only reason I have this is he's a former Akron quarterback, probably the best quarterback in Akron history.
Sure.
So, he's not the type of guy that's, on the radars of the NFL. This could be an opportunity if he, wants to jump ship to get into the college game. I know everyone wants to stay in the NFL, but at some point you plateau in the NFL just like you do in any other league and any other ranking. So maybe this is his opportunity to go back to get into the college rankings, and what better place to do that than your alma mater?
Right.
Especially being one of the best players in, school history. I definitely think Akron's going to be calling. It's just going to be willing if Charlie Fry is going to be willing to, pick up the phone. But for to go back to your alma mater, but like you say, it could go to a coordinator. There are not many that I think would take that job. There's a lot of coordinators who deserve that opportunity, but this isn't a high-profile job, especially the G5 level.
Right.
It's not going to attract, like a Charles Huff from out, like when Marshall was able to get him. But we'll see what happens. Let's move on. Let's move out west. Washington State was not a team I was expecting to be hiring a coach. They I don't think we're also expecting to be hiring a coach.
So unique circumstances. Yeah.
But Washington State is currently searching for a head coach. Who do you got taking over the Cougars?
I think they're just going to retain their interim head coach, Jake Dickert, because his name escapes me. Rolovich, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Because he left week 3, week 4? It was mid-October.
Yeah.
And he left because he didn't want to get the vaccination, personal choice, what have you. But Dickert's been doing pretty good. Especially for filling some shoes there early in the season when he really didn't expect to. He's done a pretty good job.
Yeah, I was going back and forth between two names, one of which was the interim coach. They definitely have seemed to rally behind him and really support him. So he was definitely a guy that, I was considering. But then I went just a different route. Someone, a coordinator at a big-time school. I don't think he's going to get retained by by the school he's at, simply because his school is on the list that we'll be talking about later. I think he's a coach that is just waiting for an opportunity. I'm going to go with Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator from USC.
Okay.
He was getting a lot of NFL attention. He decided to stay in college. USC, and he really is the master of running the air raid offense. Something that Mike Leach did when he was also at Washington State, and Washington State really fell in love with it. Really made it work for them. So if they want to kind of go back to that air raid offense, he's the guy to do it. They're not going to get Mike Leach back. He's a young, really stud offensive coordinator right now, and he's a guy that people want to play for. And so he can help recruit, especially in the Pac-12 where you're kind of towards the bottom of a pretty mediocre conference.
Yeah,
the type of guy that can help them slowly raise up to the top. And I think he's waiting for that opportunity. I remember the Eagles were trying to get him to be the offensive coordinator a few years ago. He decided to stay at USC. He's a coach. He's waiting for an opportunity, and I don't see USC making him the head coach. So I'm gonna say he's probably gonna be coaching elsewhere in 2022.
Yeah, that's not a bad thought. That's good, and especially with depending upon who USC ends up hiring as a head coach, he might be looking for a job anyways. Because that new head coach might be bringing in a whole new crew of guys. So that's a good thought.
Absolutely. Let's stay in state.
Okay.
One team that didn't even get a social media post from ESPN. I saw it on the little banner on SportsCenter. Jimmy Lake is out as the head coach of the Washington Huskies. They're taking over the program. So for this, I also have Washington staying within conference, defining their new head coach. I think this guy is going to get a head coaching job no matter what. But I think he's going to not go crazy like he did the last time as head coach. So I'm going to go Joe Moorhead, the current offensive coordinator for Oregon Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a better offensive-minded person right now in college football other than Joe Moorhead. When he was the offensive coordinator at Penn State, that offense was amazing. Saquon Barkley, Trace McSorley, Chris Godwin, all these amazing talent that he had on the offensive side of the ball, and he made them into incredible talent. Obviously, with Mississippi State, they had some issues down there that they needed to handle. And that was a tough job. You're going in the SEC at a bottom tier program. You're not going to succeed no matter what. So, he goes to Oregon, and then Oregon offense, obviously besides this past week against Utah, but the offenses look phenomenal all year. I think that's 100% credit to him. I think he's ready for another opportunity being a head coach. And I'm gonna say Washington scoops him up. Nice.
I think you were considering coordinators and assistant coaches a lot more than I was. I was mostly looking at head coaches, but this is good. This is good. So for Washington, I got two guys that I think are pretty even as far as I view things. I don't really have a top choice and then a backup in this one, but I was thinking either Kalani CDK, head coach for BYU, or else Jay Norville, head coach for Nevada. CDK, he's been with BYU since 2016. I think he's got like a 47-28 record, so he's done really well with the Cougars. And he's previously coached at Utah and Oregon State. So he's got familiarity with the Pac-12. So that could be a pretty simple transition for him. Norvell, he's been with Nevada since 2017. And he's coached in some sort of capacity all over the place, but he has been at some bigger schools, Texas, Oklahoma, UCLA. So he's got a little familiarity with the Pac-12, and then he did a little stint in Nebraska too. So he's familiar with bigger programs. Been doing really well at Nevada. So it might be a good spot for him to transition to, because I mean there is some high expectations there at Washington. They're not too far out from when they made the playoffs back in 2016, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Which also makes me think that Chris Peterson, the coach at the time for the Huskies, he's the part of the program administratively still, and he's part of the hiring process. So you would imagine a guy like that's going to definitely find a good one for him.
Absolutely. Well, actually, I have Kalani Sitake on another school later, so I'll save my comments for him. But yeah. Jake Norvell I don't have him on my list right now. I don't didn't really work well. Good fits for me, but he's a phenomenal young coach. So I think it's a matter of time for him. But as of right now, Jay Norvell, I think he's staying in Nevada. But we'll get to Kalani a little bit sooner. You mentioned let's go to TCU. This one actually was probably the easiest, since I was looking up candidates and they all say the same person, that this deal is basically done. Not sure if you have them, but I think it's gonna be, they're staying within state. Sonny Dykes, the SMU head coach. He's 30-17 in 3 seasons. He also spent a year as an offensive analyst at TCU, so he has familiarity with the program. He knows the state very well. I hate to read these news articles that say that the deal is basically done, and then turns out the guy's like, I actually never even got a call from them. So I like to sit there. He's a good coach. He has familiarity with the program. It's not like they're taking a nobody off the street. So, I like the fit for them. It's a tough loss for SMU, but, he's also had some pretty good talent that he's been able to produce the last 2 years. So if he can, take that to TCU, and especially with Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12, this could be his opportunity to, run the tables with the Big 12.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. So TCU, they're one of 3 SEC teams that have a vacancy right now. So that makes the whole
Big 12, buddy.
Oh shoot, I was thinking of A&M. Thank you. Yeah. I'm going to shut up. So TCU is in the Big 12. I'm up a lot later than I normally am. We usually record at 8, and it's 10 o'clock here Mountain Time, so I'm usually asleep right now. TCU Horned Frogs in the Big 12. If they don't pick up that SMU coach, I think Billy Napier from Louisiana might be a good fit here. I think if he's ready to move up to a Power 5 conference, I think this might be a good landing spot for him.
Yeah. There's a lot of G5 coaches that deserve this opportunity. So I think there's a lot of coaches that I don't think you can go wrong with. So Billy Napier is definitely one. Let's go to the job that opened up over the weekend. And I just want to go on record that last week I said this job was going to open up. And a lot of my friends who watch this show called me saying I was crazy. But Florida has fired Dan Mullen. I remember talking to one friend, and he said he's a big Florida fan. I said, it's not shocking. And he's like, it's very shocking. He did very good at Florida, but he's like, it's not good enough for Florida standards. It's not good enough for the SEC.
Sure.
But Florida's not looking for a head coach. I said I was going to mention him. I'm going to go Kalani Sitake from BYU, head coach there. BYU is very consistent with being in top 15 year in and year out. They're usually not that top G5 team, so they're not getting as much attention, but they're consistently a top 25 team. He consistently can bring in good talent. On top of that, he can develop talent so well. Look at Zach Wilson. He went from a nobody quarterback to the 2nd overall pick. You bring him into a school like Florida, a proven recruiter, a proven developer. He can make Florida back into that SEC dominant program that they were. But I think Florida but there's a lot of names I saw circulating with this. Who do you have taking over the Gators?
Yeah. So I first want to point out you called Dan Mullen losing his job, but you also thought Michigan State was going to beat Ohio State. But that's fine. I won't hold it against you. You only
Hey,
missed
I was
that.
worried about something. That's all that
You only missed that by like 60 points, but that's
40.
so
you thought TCU was in the SEC, so I'd watch your mouth over there, big boy.
we both need to go to bed, man. It's way too late. So one of the points that you brought up, the big one being recruiting, is something that I also was focusing on for the Florida job, because I think there's a recent report that they had their 5th decommit since October. So they're losing guys pretty fast, and that's really not good. But a guy like Mario Cristobal, current head coach at Oregon,
That's a good one.
Proven recruiter, does a good job. Obviously, he's been having some success at Oregon here as of late. Not as good as they want, but he's still doing well. But that recruiting, that's a huge thing, and that's something that Florida needs. So I think he might be a good transition down there to Gainesville.
Yeah, like everyone's tying him to various jobs, even guys like Mel Tucker. I just have such a hard time picking one of those two guys just because they're having such good years. I just don't seem like they're the type of guys to bounce, especially Mel Tucker. This is first year at Michigan State, so second year, something like that. First or second, he doesn't seem like the guy who's going to bounce till he finds that dream job. But we'll move on. We'll move on to the ACC, Virginia Tech. I think an opening that was long overdue, and Justin Fuente. I have not been a fan of him. He is now unemployed. Virginia Tech is now looking for a coach. My dad had sent me an article saying the top choice for Virginia Tech was Charles Huff from Marshall. And I told him I don't want to hear that shit. If you hear rumors that Charles Huff is going to the Virginia Tech job, you are crazy. Yes, he's very overqualified as an assistant coach, but as a head coach, he's done nothing. We'll get to Marshall a little bit later, but just need to put that in there. Charles Huff's not taking the Virginia Tech job, but we just mentioned this coach getting fired. I don't think it's going to be long until he gets a head coaching job. And I think this is truly the perfect situation for him. I'm going to go Dan Mullen, the former head coach of Florida. Mississippi State did a very good job. Even at Florida, he was still a very, very good coach and very successful. Wasn't good enough for the standards of Florida, but the standards of Florida and the standards of Virginia Tech and the standards of the SEC versus the ACC are completely different.
Right.
He had Florida as top 10 nationally 2 years in a row. Kyle developed one of the greatest, honestly, NFL draft prospects in a long time in Kyle Pitts. Virginia Tech's a good program. It's a small enough program, but a big enough caliber program where you can make a huge impact, especially in the ACC where Clemson's kind of taken a little bit of a dip off. It's wide open. I think he's that guy and a big profile name guy that's going to be able to help Virginia Tech, take them to the next level.
Yeah, I like that one. And that's good to point out, too, because it's easy to forget about the guys that are recently getting fired because you almost scratch them off your board, but you got to remember that they're free agents now, too. So any of these guys that have lost their current positions, they could very easily fill in at a program like Virginia Tech that's got a vacancy. We talked about him last week a little bit. We talked about Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina, about how this might be a good fit for him. He's obviously been doing well at Coastal. He's done a lot for that program. Really fun play style. Something that's probably pretty attractive for a team like Virginia Tech that really wants to revamp their program. This could be a job where maybe a coordinator fills in. We'll possibly. I did read one article that, and this might be a bit of a wild card, maybe not, but the current Liberty head coach Hugh Freeze. He formerly was a coach at Ole Miss, and Liberty is in Virginia, so they wouldn't have to pay up that much for moving fees, I guess. But that could be another sneaky one. Yeah,
I also didn't realize. I found this out a couple of weeks ago. Actually, did you know Hugh Freeze is the football coach in The Blind Side?
Oh, really?
He's the high school coach. His name's not Hugh Freeze in the movie, but that's who he's being portrayed as. So that's a little fun fact for you right there. Hugh Freeze is the coach in The Blind Side. Let's move on. Another big name opening. Very sad that Coach O is leaving. But the LSU job, it seemed like that was Mel Tucker's job. Mel Tucker got paid, and then got paid again, and then got paid a third time. So he's staying. He's going to be staying with the Spartans for another year or two. Yeah, I know. Tough life he's going to be living. But, LSU is still looking for a coach. Jimbo Fisher has been, nicknamed the guy, and his response is perfect. Why am I going to bring in the top recruiting class at A&M and then go coach at LSU that plays them every year? That is enough on his, involvement with that job. I'm assuming LSU called, and that's exactly the statement he said to them. But I'm going to go, a former – so I feel LSU is going to go with one or two directions. I think they're going to go with the coordinator from that 2019 national championship game.
Yep.
I thought Joe Brady, maybe the NFL is not for him with the Panthers. But I don't think he's quite ready for that big of a step. So I'm going to go with Dave Arnott, the Baylor head coach, former defensive coordinator at LSU during the national championship team. We already know how well he was as a defensive coordinator at LSU, and then what he's able to do with Baylor has just been phenomenal. He's a great defensive-minded coach. Again, he can bring guys in, and the guys that were there that played on that 2019 team they're going to recognize him, and he's going to be the guy that's going to walk in and they're going to immediately respect. And he's not going to have to earn the respect because he's already going to have it. So he's a phenomenal coach. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, that's a good choice. He's definitely like in my top few that I think are going to fill in here at LSU. My top two guys, they're both currently offensive coordinators. You mentioned one already, Joe Brady, which obviously he's, got that whole the whole hurdle of the NFL in between him and that job right now. Who knows if that guy wants to stay with the Panthers as an offensive coordinator, or maybe he'll want to transition back to the NCAA. We'll see. But the other guy, he potentially also could have the NFL in front of him next year. We'll see what changes up there. But Bill O'Brien, offensive coordinator for Alabama. It's very likely that there might be some big jobs open in the NFL next year, and maybe he'll want to move back up, or maybe he'll just want to stay in the NCAA, switch from offensive coordinator at Alabama, head coach for the LSU Tigers. I think he might be a good option too. Yeah,
that's a phenomenal option. I don't want to go too much in it because the next job we're going to talk about is USC, and my pick is Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
He's the name I've been saying since the start with the Trojans. I knew with this coaching hire, it's a very important coaching hire for them. They've made a lot of poor decisions. They need a home run hire to bring back, the glory and the dynasty and a dynamic, making them a dynamic football program again.
Yep.
So I love Bill O'Brien. As an NFL coach, he was very good. 4 division titles in 7 years. The GM Bill O'Brien is, I think, what got him fired. He made some horrendous decisions. Trading DeAndre Hopkins for a second was pretty easy way to get fired. So, as a GM, he was horrible. But as a head coach, he was phenomenal. 4 division titles in 7 years is something to be impressed about. But also, more importantly, he's also already a head coach in the college level. You're forgetting how he was at Penn State. He took over an impossible job, something they were calling worse than the death penalty. They were projected to win 0 games his first year. He ends up winning 7 as the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year. Year 2, they go 8-6. Still phenomenal for a team that had no scholarships. The NCAA let all players pretty much just leave without penalties. So, you took over for a coach during a horrible sexual assault scandal at Penn State and kept Penn State afloat. Even when he was an offensive coordinator, he's coached under Bill Belichick and won a couple Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Then, he goes to the NFL college, takes on a possible job, has success at the NFL level. And now he's at Alabama, and Alabama offense is clicking on all cylinders. Bryce Young is, almost on his way to a Heisman, probably just, a finalist at this point. But, he's revolutionized, and I think it's a big enough hire right now for USC that he can bring back the glory days of USC.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bill O'Brien, I mean, I just talked about him being an option for the LSU job, but he's actually my top choice for the USC job. And for all the same reasons that you just mentioned, he's got the pedigree, he's got the experience, and he's a big name. Something we talked about a couple weeks ago, I think, was USC is going to get somebody that's a big name because that's just seems like the right fit for that program. And that's why Dave Uranda, head coach for Baylor, is just my second choice for that job now. He's been doing well at Baylor. His first year wasn't that great. I think they won 3-4 games, but obviously turned it around this season. But he is originally from Southern California, so that might be something that would at least pique his interests. But I don't know if the Trojans are going to feel the same way about him.
So there's actually one thing I just realized, that we didn't bring up one name that everybody assumes he's getting a job. What about Luke Fickell from Cincinnati? You think he's staying, or do you think a big enough job's also going to open up that he's going to find his way there?
I haven't listed as a maybe, right? I just have a hard time thinking he's going to leave Cincinnati. I feel like he's got a good thing going there. The program's growing. They're winning. Why leave a good thing?
Yeah. Especially with them making that jump to the Big 12 in the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
I like that for him to stay there. I really, really do. He seems to enjoy it. I truly believe there's only one job that could open up right now that he would probably consider taking. And I don't think that coach is leaving. I think it's going to be the Ohio State job is the only one that he would consider leaving. And the only way I see Ryan Day leaving, which I think is a possibility, is if Ryan Day gets an NFL job. And truthfully, if Ryan Day left Ohio State this year to move up to the NFL, I wouldn't be shocked. He has experience at the NFL level. He's a phenomenal college coach. So he's a guy that, honestly, I still think Luke Fickell could be on the move, but that move is only going to be going up the road to Columbus.
Yeah, I think so too, especially with him being an Ohio native. That's the pinnacle of college football in Ohio. So I think that would be something that would make him move on.
Yeah. So obviously I said earlier, a lot of coaches, have already been fired, a lot of jobs opening. Is there a job right now or coach right now that is on the hot seat, and as soon as the season is over, they are unemployed?
I forget his name, Adam, but Miami.
Manny Diaz.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I would be thrilled if he got fired. But my guy, I'm going to stay within state. My friend Johnny from All About the Birds, he's not going to be happy, but I'm going to go James Franklin from Penn State. Continues to not show up in big games. They lose to Ohio State and Michigan every year. They get a terrible loss every year. He brings in phenomenal talent year in and year out, but can do nothing with it. They have, I think, a top 5 roster right now, and they're not ranked. And they're probably going to lose again this week. So, as for a recruiter, he's phenomenal. He's made he's lost a lot of his good coaches, assistant coaches over the years, and it's clearly hurt him. But I think his time is up in Happy Valley. So I love him to death, but I'm going to say James Franklin is going to be looking out there starting next year.
Yeah, that's crazy to think because, as soon as that USC job came open, James Franklin was, at the top of the list that people were speculating like, this guy might move on, might go to Southern California. But then he continued to have the season that they're having, and now just retaining his current positions in question. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's going to be fun to see how the rest of the season plays out for the coaches and who goes where, who gets fired. I still think, again, there's going to be some more coaches getting fired. I think we still can maybe see one or more big jobs open up. Yeah, maybe Jim Harbaugh finally gets canned. Probably not, but we'll see what happens. Maybe Clemson wants to move on from Dabo. Tough year. They're not going to make the playoffs this year. That's not going to happen. Don't quote me on that. But let's move on to some game picks. It is rivalry week, the best week of the year. Let's do this. Let's get right into it. Let's get to our G5 game of the week. The Moonshine Throwdown. Marshall versus Western Kentucky. Man, let's go. You can this, so I can save my energy for the end of this.
So This one should be pretty exciting, right? I mean, it's got like a 75-point over/under. It's in Huntington. The Herd had a rough one against UAB, but that was 2 weeks ago. Who'd they play last week? Charlotte bounced back against Charlotte, and this is pretty huge for a shot at the conference championship game, because the winner of this game will go, right. So it's a home game for the Herd, and I think they're gonna top the Hilltoppers in this one.
Yeah, this has always been a high scoring game when these two teams play. Obviously, two very good quarterbacks, two very high powered teams, but there's a lot on line. It's a playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
You win, you're playing in. You're going down to San Antonio for the conference championship game. You lose, you're watching the game at home. There's a lot on the line, but hopefully you can hear this. But we all know who I'm taking. Yeah, Herd by 50.
By 50, yeah. There we go.
We're going Herd by 50. Hopefully all my friends from Marshall hear this, but no, I just know I'm choosing the Hilltoppers. I hate Western Kentucky. Just go Herd all the way. I mean, look at the name of this game, the Moonshine Throwdown. You tell me that there's not a better name for a rivalry game than this one.
I didn't even know that was the name of it, but I love it now.
It's like the unofficial name the fans gave to it. And then when Marshall announced they were leaving Conference USA to go to the Sun Belt, the athletic director at Western Kentucky said, I've already been in contact with Marshall to keep the Moonshine Throwdown going. So
yes.
So I mean, at this point, the athletic directors are saying it. So that was the exciting thing, is Marshall's one game, rivalry game, can continue even once both teams. Or I guess Western Kentucky's staying, since the MAC decided to stay with what they got. But for right now, Marshall by 50. Honestly, Marshall by 60. Let's move on. Thanksgiving Day, traditional game. If you're bored of watching Tim Doyle, whatever the hell the Lions quarterback is, versus Andy Dalton, you can watch this game, the Egg Bowl.
Yeah. Ole
Miss versus Mississippi State. I think this is going to be a lot better game than you think. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tight one. When I was checking ESPN today, Mississippi State is favored by 1 point. They're the home team, so that kind of makes sense. And these are the I guess I call it the second tier of the SEC teams, where your Ole Miss, Mississippi State, they're going to be great games no matter what. They've both been ranked, I think, all year, at least in somewhere in the middle of the pack, if not a little bit higher. So it's going to be a great game, but I do like the Rebels here. I think Ole Miss is going to get the road win. Yeah,
I like Ole Miss. I think Matt Corral is going to come out and just have a day. He's a phenomenal quarterback. And, then we should have mentioned earlier, is Lane Kiffin's name has been shopped around some jobs. I think he's going to end up staying at Ole Miss, though. But I like Ole Miss in this game. Haven't been too impressed with Mississippi State this season, especially with Mike Leach. That offense hasn't looked as exciting as I kind of expected with them. But, it's a rivalry game. These two teams always play a close game. It's going to be chippy. It's going to be violent. So I remember a few years ago that terrible brawl. But, it's a Thanksgiving Day game, and anything can happen with these guys. But I really like Matt Corral in this one to get the win. All right, let's move on to another one. Another game that I didn't realize had a name, but the Bedlam series. Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. I love Caleb Williams. He still is a very, young quarterback. He's still very inexperienced. True freshman at arguably the biggest quarterback school in the country. But, he's continuously getting better. He's always growing. He's improving. I like Oklahoma to get the win. It's going to be a closer game. I think the key is Oklahoma's defense needs to step up. Oklahoma State has a firepower offense. They put up a lot of points. And if Oklahoma wants to mimic that, they need their defense needs to show up. That Oklahoma offense isn't putting up 60 points like they normally do. So they're going to rely heavily on that defense if they want to pull off the upset.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. I also got Oklahoma winning this game on the road. Oklahoma State is favored by 4 points. Over under 51, which if I were a betting man, which I am, I would take the under on this one. Oklahoma State's allowed 14.9 points per game this year. And, sometimes you get that great Oklahoma offense and sometimes you don't. So it's hard to decide, but I think it'll be a good physical football game. I think it'll probably come down to the wire like most of Oklahoma's games do. But I do think Oklahoma is going to pull this one out.
Yeah, I like Oklahoma.
And this is huge for the Big 12. This game's huge for the Big 12. So
absolutely,
and potentially a playoff spot too. Whoever wins this game, if they win the conference too, they might get a jump into the top 4. Yeah,
I like that because I was going to bring up a point. Is like I think Oklahoma State the last playoff rankings was 7, something like that. Assuming the teams ahead of them, Michigan State's obviously going to be bouncing out.
Right.
You have Michigan there, Ohio State in there. I think we'll get to the game later, but if Michigan loses and the committee sticks to what they've been preaching that the G5 is not going to get a team in, could a win this week jump Oklahoma State into the playoff picture?
Yes, I think it could. Absolutely.
I know it's going to pain you, but I think they're jumping Notre Dame no matter what because Notre Dame hasn't played anybody. Sorry.
Well, this will be a more notable win, right? So if they handedly beat the Sooners, they deserve it.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's going against Stanford. It's going to be hard to prove a point against Stanford.
I also think the big downfall for Notre Dame is if Cincinnati wins out, I can't see a reason why Notre Dame would jump Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's that's been a big thing since the playoff rankings started coming out. I think at least out of the more highly ranked teams, we'll say top 10, as far as head-to-head matchups go, Michigan's been the only one to be ranked ahead, somebody that beat them.
Yeah.
Because we even saw Oregon sitting in front of Ohio State until this week they'll be gone. But
yeah,
so that's true. They probably won't be able to.
Yeah. So I think it's a good step for the Big 12. I think they can also, try to get someone in the playoffs this year. So this is a big game. It's almost the Big 12. Office is kind of like rooting for Oklahoma State because it's their best chance to get a playoff team or even Baylor.
Yeah, I think that'd be really exciting to see a program like Oklahoma State make it. That'd be really exciting for college football.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to the Iron Bowl. I think everyone's expecting Alabama to walk in there and absolutely dominate. I think last week I even said Auburn was going to beat Alabama this week. I think this game is going to be a lot closer. I am going to take back what I said. I think Alabama is going to pull out the win. But I think it's going to be a lot closer. I'm not even sure what the line is, but I'm going to say that Alabama can't cover.
It's last I looked, 19.5. Alabama's favored.
I think Auburn's going to be able to keep it close. I really, really do. Even when Auburn's not a dominant team, they find ways to keep this game close, especially bringing it in. It's in Auburn this year. I really like this game to be a lot closer than it is. In the end, Alabama is just too skilled and too big this year. Bryce Young, is making that final push for a Heisman. Bama's trying to make that case that they should be the 2 seed over, Ohio State at the moment. But it's the Iron Bowl. This game's always a lot closer than what people imagine. But Auburn's just too banged up, and I think Alabama wins in the end.
Yeah. I like what you're saying. I think that 19.5 points, I think that's far too much. I think Auburn will be able to cover that 55-point over under. I wouldn't be too surprised if we went over that.
Over.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if both teams scored over 30 in this one. And that's just Iron Bowl for you. The biggest thing that Auburn's going to need to do, and we've seen it in past games, we've seen it in some of the big games, and we've seen it when Alabama has lost, is that secondary can prove to be a little bit vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So if Auburn's able to take advantage of that, we might see one that runs up pretty high, and it could be really exciting. But I still think Alabama's going to win.
Yeah, I think It's a tough one. I think Alabama needs that, especially since they clinch a spot in the SEC championship game. But I already have an idea. We both have an idea how that game's going to end. They need a good win on their resume right now to make their case for the playoffs better. Just because they go into that SEC championship game and get demolished by Georgia, that could possibly take them out of the top 4. But a dominating win in the Iron Bowl could help their case come time for those final playoff rankings. But if they win a close one and then they get blown out like I think they're going to in the SEC championship game, I think a tight win here is going to possibly bump them out of the college football playoffs in a few weeks.
Yeah. So let's say they smack Auburn this week, and what if they just have a narrow loss to Georgia? Do you think Alabama could be a 2-loss team that remains in the top 4?
Narrowly lose to Georgia, I think you can make the argument that they are a top 4 team.
Right.
But I think it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a very dominating win over Auburn, but it's also going to happen in other games. Is Ohio State going to win a dominating fashion in the Big Ten championship game? Are they going to win the Big Ten championship game? It also matters what's going on with those Big 12, not the ACC. ACC is done. The Big 12 schools. If Oklahoma wins this year or this week and then beats up on Baylor, Oklahoma, I think, is too far away to make the playoffs. So that's going to be in Alabama's favor. But if Oklahoma State dominates this week and goes in and dominates Baylor, or Baylor dominates Oklahoma State, you can make the argument that one of them is a top 4 team. That could you make that argument that an undefeated Baylor, or a 1-loss Baylor, or 1-loss Oklahoma State are actually better, than a 2-loss Alabama. And then you have the dark horse all year, Cincinnati. They're undefeated. They've done everything they've been asked them to do. They had a pretty easy week this week against East Carolina. Even last week, the week that everyone this is going to be the week that since he loses, they absolutely go in and dominate SMU. And even in their conference championship game, it's going to be against Houston. Houston's a top 25 team. So it's not like a walk in the park. So if you can win that game, there's your argument that Cincy should be, a top 4 team. So there's so many moving elements to this that, you could play, the what if game, but truly it's so hard to tell because it's such a toss up right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fun reading articles and listening to people talk about it because this huge roadmap in my head just explodes whenever somebody takes me down a specific route. I'm like, man, that could happen. And there's some very significant games this week and then going into the conference championships that is going to be huge for the playoffs, obviously. And it's going to be really exciting to see how it all shakes out. And honestly, if it plays out kind of like what we're talking about, I won't be surprised if we do see a 2-loss team make it for the first time. I don't think it will happen, but I won't be that surprised. But there's some really good programs that are going to end up with 2 losses this year that may still deserve a bid into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's going to be a 2-loss team in the playoffs, I ultimately think it's going to be Alabama. Of the history of the committee and the history of Alabama, but here's a weird scenario for you.
So going with like what I said before, let's say Alabama, big win against Auburn, narrow loss to Georgia. Georgia still retains that number 1 ranking, but obviously Alabama has 2 losses. They got to be number 4, right? So do you think the committee will take that into consideration? Be like, well, they just played each other in the conference championship game. Why should they play each other again in the first round of the playoffs? Do you think that's do you think that's taken into consideration? Because to you, would that be kind of silly?
Yeah, I think that has to be brought into consideration. Whoever is at 5 is, it's between Alabama at 4 and I would say, let's say Baylor at 5.
Sure.
I think whoever that Big 12 champ is going to hop Notre Dame just because.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just don't see Notre Dame as a top 4 team this year. They keep winning, but at some point they're going to plateau. But you look at that Big 12 champ versus a 2-loss Alabama. I know as a fan, I don't want to see Georgia versus Alabama again, especially if Alabama wins, or wins that second game like a few years ago. It's just not what best for the sport. It's not best for college football.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to realize it's a 2-loss Alabama versus a 1-loss Big 12 champ. You have a 2-loss Alabama who lost to an unranked team, lost the conference championship game, versus whoever this 1-loss Big 12 champ is, who's going to have wins over Baylor, who's going to have wins over Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, like going to have very good wins on their resume that you can make the argument with better quality wins than Alabama's wins. So
yeah,
it's between Alabama and that Big 12 champ. I'm leaning towards more of the Big 12 champ.
Sure.
Than Alabama.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I am too.
Yeah. We'll move on to the game. There's no other way to say it. That's literally what it's called, the game. As of right now, it's number 2 Ohio State versus number whatever Michigan is.
7?
Doesn't matter. Michigan's going to be a double-digit seeded team in about a week.
6.
Yeah, Ohio State obviously coming off just the biggest win of the season for any team, in my opinion. Put it like I had high hopes for Michigan State. I had high hopes this was going to be a good game. But Ohio State's strength has shown. They have the best wide receiver room in the country. That it's not even an argument. And then you look at C.J. Stroud, who's at this point, I think he's, according to Vegas, taken over as the favorite for the Heisman, and I think he's the front runner. You have the best quarterback, you have the best wide receivers to surround him. The offense is clicking, and then that defense has just been, was locked, lights out. And then on top of it, they're playing Michigan. It's obviously at the Big House, but Jim Harbaugh has never won this game. He's never prepared for the big games since he's been at Michigan. And there's no reason he's going to start now. Michigan's defense is phenomenal. Their edge rushers are 2 guys they'll having their names called in the first round come April for the draft, especially the Aiden Hutchinson, who's a top 10 talent. But I think in the end, Ohio State has just so many great weapons. I heard an analogy. They were talking about Michigan State, and Michigan State had the best player on the field in Kenneth Walker last week. But Ohio State had the better team.
Yeah.
Michigan has better talent, I think, in certain areas, especially like on the defensive line compared to Ohio State's offensive line.
Right.
And Ohio State's the better overall team, has the more talent. So I'm going with the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that win last week against Michigan State, I think, just speaks volumes, right? Because Michigan State's a tough team. And, they may not have showed up their best, but Ohio State just smacked them, right? And what we've been talking about for the majority of this season, as far as the Heisman Trophy goes, is there really hasn't been a clear picture for the longest time. It's like, well, nobody's really standing out. Nobody's got that wow factor. We kind of just been waiting for somebody to show up and have a huge performance. Well, if that huge performance didn't happen last week with C.J. Stroud in the first half of that game, then I don't know if we're ever going to see it, because that was just insane. He had, I think, 393 yards and 6 touchdowns in the first half. I mean, he had over a 90% completion rate, I think, throughout the whole game. So it was just insane. It was remarkable. But yeah, Buckeyes, they're favored by 8 on the road this week. They'll probably do more than that. 64-point over under. If it's like last week, you can hit the over, and Ohio State will get there for you. So, but yeah, I got the Buckeyes. Yeah,
it's gonna be I think a closer game than Michigan State.
Yeah, it probably will.
I still think Ohio State completely dominates Michigan. For me, Ohio State's the only team that I think has a realistic chance to beat Georgia. But I don't think it's enough to beat Georgia. But I think it's going to be an exciting game. I really, really hope we get to see those 2 teams play at some point this season. But this is a big week for Ohio State. Obviously, they need to win out to make the playoffs. I'm not sure if they've clinched a spot in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. I would assume a win here and somebody loses. if not,
I think they would have to lose to Michigan to not get in.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why they won't be playing for the conference championship game.
Yeah.
But I think Ohio State is on their way to being I think should be the 2 seed. I think they should jump Alabama after the week they had, where Alabama was supposed to be this overwhelming favorite against Arkansas. And even though they I think won by double digits, it wasn't a pretty win. Alabama did not play like Alabama football against Arkansas. And granted, Arkansas has been a pretty good team this year. But for being the number 2 team in the country, I was expecting a lot more from Bama. But I think Ohio State did enough to jump from 4, especially with Oregon now out of the picture. I think Ohio State did enough to jump from 4 to 2.
I agree, 100%. Yeah, it's just a 7-point win against Arkansas, which and Arkansas is another one of those like Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I call it second tier of the SEC, which is still some pretty high quality football. But a team like Alabama definitely should have had a bigger victory than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's gonna be an exciting week. It's rivalry week. It's Thanksgiving week. Always a lot of excitement this week for the eyes of the NFL and college football. So a lot of exciting things. Final thoughts, going into this week. What do you got from this?
There's obviously there's a few Thursday games. The big SEC game, Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Keep an eye out for the Friday slate. There's a pretty big Friday slate with some good games. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there's some good football on Friday. And then, of course, a bunch of big games on Saturday, so keep an eye out for that. Should be another exciting week of football. Got 3 good days of football. Well, actually Thursday through Sunday if you're watching NFL too. So there's going to be a lot of good football all week. So
yeah, it's an exciting week. It's rivalry week. You always have that excitement as a college football fan. It's always the game you have circled on your calendar.
Yep.
So we talked a lot about a lot of these smaller teams. UTSA, another undefeated team, barely picked out a win against UAB. Obviously, they were waiting for their opponent. Between Marshall and Western Kentucky, but it's an exciting time. Obviously, most importantly, it's Thanksgiving. This show will be coming out on Thursday. It is not live because Jerred and I both want to be with our families on Thanksgiving, and not y'all. So we're recording this obviously before the college football playoff comes out rankings, but we all have a pretty general idea of what that's going to look like. Honestly, 6 through 25 is pretty irrelevant. So we'll excited to see what those come out. We will be back next week, next Thursday. We will be live. So we'll be more live shows. We'll be breaking down the conference championship games. Hopefully Marshall is playing in and all the other exciting playoff games. We'll also be coming to you guys live right after the playoff rankings come out to talk to you about the college football playoff matchups and, the fun stuff like that. But, another fun, great episode. As always, make sure you guys all have a very happy and safe Thanksgiving holiday. We'll be back next week for another episode of College Football Cut. Make sure you tune in to all the fun shows at the Cut FFB. You hear me say it every week. You know by now which ones you need to subscribe to. I'm losing brain cells at this point. But for Jerred Harrell, I'm Adam Mack.